25 years passed. The galaxy forgot about humanity. The Concorde species checked on Earth from time to time. Their scout ships would drift through the Sol system, scanning the primitive human settlements, recording data for archives that no one would ever read. The reports were always the same. Humans were spreading slowly through their system. They had built new colonies on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They were mining asteroids for metals. Small, boring progress from a small, boring species. The Velkari ambassador sometimes mentioned humanity at Concorde parties, always as a joke. "Remember those little apes who wanted to join us?" he would say, and everyone would laugh. The Shreen wrote academic papers about human psychology, studying their violence and aggression as if they were examining bacteria under a microscope. The Cathara did not think about humans at all. Why would they? Humans were nothing. But if the Concorde had looked more closely, they would have noticed something strange. Something that should have worried them very much. The greatest human scientists were disappearing. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was one of them. She was 32 years old when she received the message. She had just won her second Nobel Prize for her work on quantum field theory. She was the youngest person ever to hold the title of professor at MIT. Her face was on the cover of every major science magazine. Then she vanished. Her colleagues said she had gone on sabbatical. Her family said she was working on a private project. But no one could reach her. No one knew where she had gone. It was as if she had fallen off the edge of the Earth itself. In truth, she had gone much farther than that. The facility beneath the ice of Titan was enormous. It stretched for miles underground, carved into the frozen moon by machines that the public did not know existed. This was the heart of Project Prometheus, and Dr. Marcus Chen was waiting for Yuki when she arrived. He was 95 years old now, kept alive by technology that was decades ahead of anything available to ordinary people. His body was frail, but his mind was sharper than ever. He stood in a vast chamber filled with equipment that Yuki did not recognize, surrounded by hundreds of scientists from every nation on Earth. "Welcome, Dr. Tanaka," Chun said. "I apologize for the secrecy, but what I am about to show you must never leave this room." He led her to a holographic display that showed something impossible. It was a schematic of a machine, but the principles behind it made no sense. Yuki stared at it for a long time, her brilliant mind trying to understand what she was seeing. "This is impossible," she whispered. "You're talking about manipulating the fundamental forces of reality itself." "No one can do that." "No one could do it," Chun corrected. "Until 3 years ago, a team in this facility made a breakthrough. We discovered that the barrier between what is possible and what is impossible is thinner than anyone believed. With enough energy, enough precision, enough will, we can break through it." Yuki shook her head. "Even if the theory is sound, the engineering would take centuries." "We don't have centuries. We have 22 years. That's when the Concorde Review Board will visit Earth again. By then, we need to be ready." "Ready for what?" Chun's ancient face twisted into something that was almost a smile. "Ready to show them exactly what humanity can do when it is angry." The years that followed were the hardest of Yuki's life. She worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. She solved problems that should have taken decades to solve. When one approach failed, she invented new approaches. When new materials were needed, she created them. When equations did not work, she wrote new equations. She was not alone. Thousands of scientists worked alongside her, the greatest minds humanity had ever produced. Engineers built machines that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. Physicists discovered new particles that the Concorde species had never imagined. Mathematicians developed formulas that described realities beyond the one humans could see. And deep in the hearts of all of them burned a cold, patient fury. They remembered the laughter. They remembered the contempt. They remember being called insects, being dismissed as children, being told that nothing they had ever done mattered. That memory was fuel. It kept them working when their bodies screamed for rest. It kept them pushing forward when every obstacle seemed impossible to overcome. The project grew. New facilities appeared on Ceres, on Europa, on asteroids so distant that no Concorde scout would ever find them. Entire economies were secretly redirected. Governments rose and fell, but Project Prometheus continued regardless. It was bigger than any nation, bigger than any leader, bigger than any individual human. It was humanity's collective answer to a universe that had rejected them. Children grew up hearing whispers about the project. They did not know what it was, but they knew it was important. The best students were quietly recruited. The smartest engineers disappeared into secret facilities. An entire generation of human genius was poured into a single purpose. UK. I watched it all happen. She watched herself grow older, her hair turning gray, her eyes growing tired. She watched Marcus Chen finally die at the age of 112, passing the torch to her with his last breath. She watched the project inch forward, year after year, breakthrough after breakthrough, and finally, after 25 years of impossible work, it was done. The Retribution device stood before her in a chamber carved from the heart of Titan. It did not look impressive. It was a sphere of dark metal about the size of a small house, covered in patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them. But appearances meant nothing. What mattered was what it could do. YUKI ran her hands over the smooth surface. She thought about the laughter of the Valkyrie. She thought about the contempt of the Shrine. She thought about all the years of silent, burning anger that had led to this moment. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Her assistant approached, a young man named Kenji, who had been born after the project began. "Dr. Tanaka, the message is ready to broadcast. We just need your authorization." Yuki nodded slowly. "Send it." The message went out across every frequency the Concorde used. It was short. It contained only a set of coordinates and a time. At the bottom, it said simply, "From the pre-emergent curiosity of soul." Across the galaxy, Concorde communication officers frowned at the strange transmission. Most of them ignored it, but a few were curious enough to mark the date on their calendars. Whatever the humans were planning, it might be amusing to watch. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that in one small corner of the universe, the insects they had laughed at had built something that would shake the foundations of reality itself. No idea that the cosmos would never be the same again. The silence was over. Now came the thunder. The great hall of the Galactic Concorde stretched for miles in every direction. Floating platforms held delegates from 1,000 worlds. Strange lights danced in the air. Music that was not quite music played softly in the background. This was the heart of galactic civilization, a place where species that had traveled between stars for millions of years gathered to decide the fate of the cosmos. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of it all. Feeling very small, she was 52 years old. Her hair was dark with streaks of gray. Her suit was the finest Earth could make, but compared to the flowing robes of light worn by the Shrine delegates, it looked like something from a museum. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Humanity's first contact with alien life had happened only 20 years ago. Now, finally, they had been invited to apply for membership in the Galactic Concorde. Elena cleared her throat and began to speak. "Distinguished members of the Concorde," she said. Her voice was steady, practiced. "On behalf of the 8 billion souls of Earth and the 2 million colonists of Mars, I come before you today to request that humanity be granted membership in this august body." She paused. The translator devices hummed, converting her words into 1,000 different languages. She looked out at the assembled delegates. The Valkyrie were easy to spot. They were tall reptilian beings with scales that shimmered like oil on water. They had been traveling between stars for over 1,000,000 years. Next to them floated the Shreen, crystalline entities that looked like living diamonds. The insectoid Kethra clicked and buzzed in their sealed environment pods. Dozens of other species filled the hall, each stranger than the last. None of them looked impressed. Elena continued anyway. She spoke of humanity's achievements. The first moon landing, the cure for cancer, fusion power, the colony ships that had carried brave pioneers to Mars and beyond. She spoke of human art, human music, human dreams. She spoke for nearly an hour, pouring her heart into every word. When she finished, there was silence. Then the laughter began. It started with the Valkyrie. Their version of laughter was a hissing, clicking sound that made Elena's skin crawl. It spread quickly. The Shreen vibrated with amusement, their crystal bodies ringing like bells. The Kethra made sounds that the translator rendered as deep, mocking chuckles. Even species that Elena could not identify joined in. The entire hall was laughing at her, at humanity, at everything they had ever accomplished. High Counselor Sethrak of the Valkyrie raised one clawed hand. The laughter slowly died down, though Elena could still see amusement dancing in thousands of alien eyes. Ambassador Vasquez, Sethrak said. His voice was smooth and cold, like a snake sliding over glass. We thank you for this entertaining presentation. However, I fear there has been a misunderstanding. The Galactic Concord does not accept membership applications from pre-emergent species. Elena felt her face grow hot. Pre-emergent? With respect, High Counselor, humanity has achieved faster than light travel. We have colonized multiple worlds. You have been in space for less than 400 of your years, Sethrak interrupted. My species was building starships before your ancestors climbed down from the trees. The Shreen existed before your sun ignited. You are children, infants. You have achieved nothing that we did not achieve 1,000 times over, 1,000,000 years ago. Another delegate spoke up. This one was a Shreen, her crystalline form glowing with soft blue light. It is not merely your youth that concerns us, Ambassador. It is your nature. We have studied your species carefully. You are aggressive, violent. You have fought wars among yourselves for your entire history. You slaughter each other over resources, over ideas, over nothing at all. Such behavior is not compatible with galactic civilization. Elena wanted to argue. She wanted to point out that humanity had changed, that they had learned from their mistakes, that they were better now. But the words died in her throat as she looked around the hall and saw only contempt in every alien face. The vote was quick. Every single species voted against humanity's application. Not one voice spoke in their defense. Sethrak delivered the final judgment. Humanity is hereby classified as a pre-emergent curiosity. You may continue to develop within your own system, but you are forbidden from expanding beyond your current colonies. Concord vessels will monitor your progress. Perhaps in another 100,000 years, when you have matured sufficiently, you may apply again. He made a gesture that the translator identified as dismissal. You may go now, little ones. The adults have important matters to discuss. More laughter followed Elena as she walked back to her shuttle. Her legs felt numb. Her heart felt like a stone in her chest. She had failed. Not just herself, but all of humanity. Every dream of joining a greater galactic community, of learning from ancient civilizations, of taking humanity's rightful place among the stars, all of it had been crushed in a single afternoon. The shuttle ride back to the Terran ship was silent. Her aides did not know what to say. What could anyone say? But there was one person on the observation deck who was not silent. Dr. Marcus Chen stood by the viewport, watching the great Concorde station shrink into the distance. He was 70 years old, with thin white hair and eyes that had seen too much. Officially, he was a scientific advisor. Unofficially, he ran the most secret division of humanity's defense research. Elena joined him at the viewport. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I tried. I really tried." Chun did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on the stars. "You did exactly what you needed to do, Elena. You showed us what we're dealing with." "What do you mean?" Chun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft and cold. "They think we're insects. Less than insects. They laughed at us, Elena. They laughed at everything our species has ever accomplished. Every war we fought, every mountain we climbed, every disease we cured, every dream we dared to dream, none of it matters to them." He turned to face her. There was something in his eyes that Elena had never seen before. Something hard and ancient and terrifying. "But they made a mistake today," Chun said. "They showed us exactly who they are. And they showed us that we can never join their little club. We were never meant to join them." Elena frowned. "Then what are we meant to do?" Chun smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We're going to make them remember us, Elena. We're going to make them remember us until the stars burn out." He pulled out his communication device and began making calls. As Elena watched, she felt a chill run down her spine. She did not know what Chun was planning, but she knew, somehow, that the galaxy would never be the same dot deep beneath the red sands of Mars. In a bunker that did not officially exist, a file was unsealed for the first time in 50 years. Across its cover, stamped in letters the color of blood, were 2 words, Project Prometheus. Beside those words, someone had written a note, authorized for full development. No limits, no restrictions, no mercy. The age of human submission had ended. The age of human vengeance had begun. The Kepler void was one of the emptiest places in the galaxy. No stars burned here. No planets turned in silent orbits. There was nothing but darkness stretching in every direction for light years. The Concorde had chosen this place for dangerous experiments, the kind of experiments that might accidentally destroy a solar system. Now it would serve a different purpose. 47 Concorde observation vessels waited in the void. They had come from every corner of the galaxy, representing a dozen different species. The Valkyrie had sent their newest battlecruiser, a massive ship bristling with weapons that could crack moons. The Shreen had sent a science vessel filled with their greatest minds. The Kethra had sent a swarm of smaller ships, each one connected to the hive mind that controlled their species. They had come to laugh again. Commander Sethrak the Younger stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie battlecruiser. He was the grandson of the High Counselor who had rejected humanity's application 25 years ago. Like his grandfather, he found the whole situation amusing. "How kind of the little apes to provide entertainment," he said to his officers. "I wonder what pathetic display they have prepared for us. Perhaps they have learned to juggle." His officers laughed. In the void outside, other crews were making similar jokes. This would be a day to remember, they thought. Another chance to remind themselves how superior they were to the primitive species of the galaxy. Then the human ship arrived. It came out of hyperspace without warning. One moment the void was empty. The next moment it was there, a sleek angular vessel, unlike anything the Concorde had ever seen. Its hull was dark, almost invisible against the blackness of space. Its design did not match any known physics. It should not have been able to fly, but there it was, hanging silently among the Concorde ships like a knife waiting to strike. On the bridge of the battlecruiser, Commander Sethrak's smile faded slightly. "Scan that vessel." His sensor officer worked frantically at his console. His scales paled with confusion. "Commander, I cannot get clear readings. The ship is... I do not know how to describe it. It is like looking at a hole in space itself. Before Sethrak could respond, a transmission came through. Every screen on every ship in the void flickered, and then a human face appeared. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was 77 years old now. Her hair was silver, pulled back in a severe bun. Lines of age marked her face, but her eyes were sharp and bright and cold. She looked nothing like the nervous diplomat who had begged for acceptance a quarter-century ago. She looked like a woman who had spent 25 years preparing for this moment. "Distinguished members of the Concord," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. 25 years ago, I stood before you and asked for humanity to be given a place in your civilization. You laughed at us. You called us children. You said we were too aggressive, too violent, too primitive to join you. She paused. A thin smile crossed her lips. You were right. Sethrak felt something he had never felt before. He did not recognize it at first. It took him a moment to realize that it was fear. We were never meant to join you, Vasquez continued. We understand that now. You showed us what you truly thought of us. You showed us that no matter what we achieved, no matter how far we advanced, you would always see us as insects to be studied and dismissed. So we stopped trying to impress you. We stopped trying to be like you. We decided to be something else entirely. The human ship began to move. It drifted toward the center of the void, toward a distant point that the Concord sensors could barely detect, a tiny dwarf star, cold and dim at the edge of the Kepler region. What you are about to see, Vasquez said, is the result of 25 years of work. Every resource humanity had, every genius we possessed, every ounce of fury and spite and determination, all of it was poured into a single project. We call it the Retribution device. Sethrak's first officer leaned close. Commander, should we open fire? Destroy the human ship before what? Sethrak snapped. But even as he said it, he felt the fear growing stronger. There was something in Vasquez's eyes that he did not like. The look of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. The look of someone who held all the cards. We could destroy you, Vasquez said, as if reading his thoughts. All of you. Every ship in this void. Every planet in the Concord. We could end your civilizations as easily as you dismissed ours. But that is not why we brought you here. We brought you here to learn. The Retribution device activated. There was no warning, no countdown, no dramatic build-up. One moment, the dwarf star burned dimly in the distance. The next moment, it was gone. Not exploded. Not collapsed. Just gone. In its place was something that no Concord sensor could understand. It was a sphere of absolute nothingness, a hole in the fabric of reality itself. No light escaped it. No energy, no information. It was as if someone had taken a piece of the universe and simply erased it from existence. The shock wave hit every ship in the void simultaneously. It was not a physical shock wave, no blast of energy, no wave of force. It was something deeper. Every sensor overloaded. Every computer crashed. Every being present felt something pass through them. Something that made their minds stutter and their hearts freeze. For a moment, the entire Concord fleet was blind and helpless. When their systems came back online, Sethrak found himself gripping his command chair so hard that his claws had torn through the metal. His officers were staring at their screens with expressions of pure horror. The Shireen Science vessel was broadcasting distress signals. Half of their crew had gone into shock. The Kethra swarm was spinning in confused circles, their hive mind temporarily shattered by what it had witnessed. Ambassador Vasquez's face appeared on the screens again. She was still smiling. That was our smallest device, she said. We have 300 more. Some of them are much larger. large enough to erase entire solar systems, large enough to unmake civilizations that have existed for millions of years. She leaned forward, and her eyes burned with cold fire. You call this aggressive. You call this violent. You were absolutely right. And now that aggression, that violence, has been forced into something your ancient civilizations cannot match. You had 1,000,000 years to prepare. We did this in 25. Silence filled the void. No one laughed now. We are not asking for membership anymore, Vasquez said. We are not asking for permission. We are informing you of a new reality. Humanity is no longer a pre-emergent curiosity. Humanity is a power that you will respect. She straightened in her chair. You have 1 year to prepare for negotiations. When we meet again, you will treat us as equals. Or you will learn what happens when you push a pre-emergent species too far. The transmission ended. The human ship turned and vanished into hyperspace, leaving 47 Concorde vessels floating in the darkness. Commander Sethric stared at the void where the dwarf star had been. His grandfather had laughed at the humans. His father had dismissed them as irrelevant. Now he understood the truth. They had made the worst mistake in galactic history. They had taught humanity how to hate, and humanity had listened very, very carefully. The news spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. At first, no one believed it. A dwarf star erased from existence? A primitive species with weapons that defied the laws of physics? Impossible. Ridiculous. The reports must be wrong. But the reports kept coming. Every observer at the Kepler void told the same story. The sensor data was shared across secure channels. The Shreen scientists, once they recovered from their shock, confirmed what everyone feared. The readings were real. The humans had done the impossible. Panic followed. On Concorde Prime, the capital world of galactic civilization, the Great Council chamber filled with more delegates than it had ever held before. Species that had not spoken to each other in millennia sat side by side, united by fear. The air hummed with 1,000 different languages, all asking the same question. What do we do now? High Counselor Sethric, ancient and terrible in his jeweled robes, called for silence. His voice echoed through the chamber like the tolling of a funeral bell. We face a crisis unlike any in our history, he said. The humans have developed a weapon that can destroy stars. Our military advisors have run every simulation. In every scenario, we lose. If the humans choose to use their weapons against us, we cannot stop them. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted over each other. Some called for immediate surrender. Some called for immediate surrender. Others demanded that the Concorde strike first, destroy Earth before the humans could act. A few simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were hearing. In a private room above the chamber, a group of Velkari military officers gathered around a secure communication screen. Their leader was Admiral Kethrak, a scarred veteran of a dozen wars. Unlike the politicians below, he did not waste time with arguments. The humans have shown us their weapon, he said. They've not shown us their defenses. Earth is still vulnerable. If we strike quickly, with overwhelming force, we can end this threat before it grows. One of his officers hesitated. But the demonstration, the power they showed, was meant to frighten us. And it has worked. The Council is paralyzed with fear. But fear is not reality. The humans have 300 devices, they say. We have thousands of warships. We have weapons that have ended empires. If we gather our forces and attack now, while they are still celebrating their victory, we can destroy them. The officers exchanged glances. The plan was risky. It might fail. But the alternative was worse. Living under the shadow of human power, knowing that at any moment they could be erased from existence, That was not something the proud Volcari could accept. "How many ships?" the officer asked. 300. Our best, our fastest, our most powerful. Enough firepower to crack Earth like an egg. We will not give them time to use their devices. We will not give them time to do anything." The fleet was assembled in secret. 300 of the finest warships in the Volcari Navy, commanded by Admiral Kethrak himself. They gathered at a staging point far from Concord Prime, far from any world that might report their movements. The crews were told nothing except that they were going on a mission of vital importance. On the last night before departure, Kethrak stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the stars. He was not a cruel being. He did not hate humans, but he understood the nature of power. The galaxy had been stable for millions of years because the strong species controlled the weak. If the humans were allowed to upset that balance, chaos would follow. This was not murder, he told himself. This was surgery, removing a cancer before it could spread. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. 300 ships, carrying enough weapons to destroy a civilization, racing toward a small blue planet that had dared to threaten the masters of the galaxy. But on that small blue planet, someone was waiting. Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat in the command center on Titan, watching screens filled with data from across the solar system. She was 82 years old now, too old to feel excitement, too old to feel fear. But she felt something when the subspace sensors detected the approaching fleet. She felt satisfaction. "They came," she said quietly. "Just like you predicted, Marcus." The ghost of her old mentor seemed to smile in her memory. They had planned for this. They had always known that the Concord would not simply accept their new position in the galaxy. Someone would try to strike back. Someone would try to prove that the old order could not be overthrown so easily. The Volcari had volunteered for the lesson. UK, I opened a channel to Ambassador Vasquez, who was waiting on the Prometheus rising in orbit around Earth. "They're coming. 300 warships. They'll be here in 6 hours. Vasquez's voice was calm. "Are we ready?" "We've been ready for 25 years. I'm sending the coordinates to the defense fleet now." "How many ships are we deploying?" Yuki smiled. It was the same cold smile that Marcus Chun used to wear. 12. There was a pause. 12 ships against 300? Trust me, it's more than enough. Back in hyperspace, Admiral Kethrak reviewed his battle plans for the 100th time. The Earth Defense Fleet was small. The humans had never built many warships, focusing their resources on the Retribution project instead. His 300 vessels would crush whatever resistance they encountered. They would glass the human homeworld, destroy the colonies on Mars and the outer moons, and end the human threat forever. He did not know that every subspace transmission from his fleet had been intercepted. He did not know that the humans had been reading Concord communications for the past 25 years. He did not know that Yuki Tanaka had predicted this exact scenario and planned for it. Years ago, he did not know that he was flying into a trap when the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Kethrak felt a moment of triumph. There it was, Earth, small and blue and fragile, hanging in the darkness like a jewel waiting to be crushed. This would be easy. This would be quick. History would remember him as the admiral who saved Galactic Civilization. Then his sensors detected the human ships. There were only 12 of them, just as Yuki had said. 12 small vessels, arranged in a loose formation between the Volcari fleet and Earth. They looked like toys compared to the massive battleships bearing down on them. Kethrak laughed. Is this their defense? 12 ships? Open fire. Destroy them all. His fleet surged forward. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked on. In moments, those 12 little ships would be nothing but scattered atoms. But the human ships did not run. They did not fire conventional weapons. They simply waited, and then they activated their Retribution emitters. 12 beams of impossible energy lanced out across space. They did not touch the Volcari ships. Instead, they touched something more important, the fabric of reality around them. In 12 precise points, space itself twisted and broke. Every engine in the Volcari fleet died simultaneously. Every weapon went dark. Every shield collapsed. The ships were still intact, still whole, but they were utterly helpless. Drifting in the void like leaves on a frozen pond. 300 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, disabled in less than 10 seconds. Admiral Kethrak stared at his darkened bridge in disbelief. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a dim red glow. His officers scrambled at their consoles, trying to understand what had happened. A transmission came through. Ambassador Vasquez's face appeared on the emergency display. "Admiral Kethrak," she said, "you came here to destroy our home, our families, our children. You came here to murder 8 billion innocent souls." Her voice was calm and cold and terrible. "We could destroy you now. We could erase every atom of your fleet from existence. It would take less than a minute." Kethrak found his voice. "Then do it. Finish it." Vasquez shook her head slowly. "No, that is not who we are. We built our weapons out of anger, Admiral. But we will not use them out of cruelty." She paused. "Your crews are alive. Your ships are intact. We are going to tow you to a Concord station and send you home. And you are going to tell everyone what you saw here today. You are going to tell them that you came to destroy humanity, and humanity chose to let you live." The transmission ended in the darkness of his ruined bridge. Admiral Kethrak felt something break inside him. It was not his body. It was not his ship. It was his certainty that his species was superior. The humans had spared him. They had shown mercy to an enemy that had come to slaughter them. And in doing so, they had proven something more terrifying than any weapon. They had proven that they were better than their enemies. The galaxy changed after the Battle of Sol, not slowly, the way civilizations usually change, but quickly, like a river finding a new path after an earthquake. The old order had cracked, and something new was flowing through. Admiral Kethrak kept his word. When the Concord rescue ships towed his disabled fleet back to Volcari space, he told everyone what had happened. He did not try to hide his shame or make excuses for his failure. He simply told the truth. The humans had defeated them completely, and then they had let them go. That truth spread through the galaxy faster than any weapon could travel. Some species reacted with anger. How dare the humans show mercy? It was an insult, a way of proving that they did not even consider the Volcari worth killing. Others reacted with fear. If the humans could disable 300 warships without breaking a sweat, what else could they do? But a few species reacted with something unexpected. Hope. On a small moon orbiting a gas giant in the outer arm of the galaxy. A young member of the Threll species listened to the news broadcast with wide, wondering eyes. The Threll were a new species, only 10,000 years into their spacefaring age. The Concord had classified them as pre-emergent, just like they had once classified humanity. They had been told to wait in their corner of space and be patient. Maybe in another 100,000 years, they would be ready to join galactic civilization. Now they heard about humans who had been dismissed the same way. Humans who had refused to accept their place. Humans who had built something impossible and shaken the cosmos to its foundations. And humans who had chosen mercy when they could have chosen vengeance. The young Threll turned to her elder and asked the question that was being asked on 1,000 worlds. What does this mean for us? Ambassador Elena Vasquez arrived at Concord Prime 3 months after the battle. This time, no one laughed. The great hall was silent as she walked to the central podium, and every eye in the chamber was fixed on her with a mixture of fear and respect. High Counselor Sethrak was still in his seat of power, though he looked much older than he had 25 years ago. His scales had lost their shine. His eyes had lost their arrogance. He watched Vasquez approach with something that might have been resignation. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, "you have come to dictate your terms." Vasquez shook her head. "No, High Counselor. I have come to offer you a choice." She activated a holographic display. It showed the galaxy, thousands of inhabited worlds scattered across the stars. Some were marked in green, some in red, some in blue. "Humanity could rule this galaxy," Vasquez said. "We have the power. Our retribution devices could eliminate any species that opposed us. We could become emperors of everything you see here." She paused. "We choose not to." The chamber stirred with confusion. Sethrak's eyes narrowed. "I do not understand. You built weapons that can destroy stars. Why would you not use them?" "Because we remember what it felt like to be small," Vasquez said. "We remember being laughed at, being dismissed, being told that we did not matter. And we decided that when we became powerful, we would not do the same thing to others." She gestured at the map. "These worlds in green are species like the Threll, the Vendari, the Kos-young civilizations that you have classified as pre-emergent. Species that you have ignored and dismissed, just as you once dismissed us. We are not asking you to give them power. We are telling you that we will protect them." Sethrak leaned forward. "You would go to war for species you have never met?" "We would, but we hope it will not come to that." Vasquez's voice softened slightly. "We are not here to destroy the Concord, High Counselor. We are here to change it. We want the same thing we wanted 25 years ago. A seat at the table. A voice in galactic affairs. Respect. And if we refuse, then we will build our own table. And eventually, everyone will choose to sit at ours instead of yours." The negotiations took months. Many Concord species resisted pride is not easily swallowed, especially pride that has lasted for millions of years. But one by one, they came around. The Shreen were the first, fascinated by human science and eager to study the principles behind the retribution device. The Kethra hive mind followed, calculating that cooperation was more logical than conflict. Even some of the Velkari eventually agreed, led by a young officer named Sethrak the Younger, who remembered the fear he had felt in the Kepler Void and decided that fear was not a way to live. Humanity took its seat in the Galactic Concord, not as conquerors, but as equals. And something remarkable happened. They started helping. Human engineers traveled to distant worlds to share their technology. Not the retribution devices. Those remained locked away, a last resort that everyone hoped would never be needed. But the other discoveries that had come from Project Prometheus, new energy sources, new medical treatments, new ways of thinking about the universe, these they gave freely, asking nothing in return except friendship. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, now in her late 80s, supervised the first exchange program. Young scientists from a dozen species came to human facilities to learn, and young human scientists traveled to alien worlds to teach. It was messy and difficult and sometimes frustrating. But slowly, bridges were built. The young species, the Threll, the Vendari, the Kos, and dozens of others found something they had never had before: advocates. When the Concord tried to dismiss their concerns, human delegates spoke up for them. When older species tried to bully them, human ships appeared to remind everyone that bullying was no longer acceptable. A new generation grew up in this changed galaxy. Young Velkari played games with young humans in virtual spaces. Young Shreen and young Threll studied together at universities that welcomed all species. The old hatreds did not disappear. Healing takes time, but they began to fade. 40 years after the Battle of Seoul, Ambassador Elena Vasquez died peacefully in her home on Earth. She was 117 years old. Her funeral was attended by delegates from every major species in the galaxy, including High Counselor Sethric himself, who had finally stepped down from his position to make way for younger leaders. Dr. Yuki Tanaka gave the eulogy. She was 106 years old, frail and tired, but her voice was still strong. Elena once asked me why we built the Retribution device, she said. I told her we built it because we had to, because the galaxy gave us no choice. But that was only half the truth. She looked out at the crowd, humans and aliens together, united in grief for a woman who had changed the universe. The other half of the truth is this: we built it so that no one would ever have to build it again. We became powerful so that the small would not have to fear the strong. We shook the cosmos so that it could settle into something better. She smiled, and there were tears on her cheeks. Elena understood that. She understood that power without mercy is just tyranny. She understood that the greatest victory is not destroying your enemies, but turning them into friends. She showed the galaxy that humanity could be more than our worst instincts. She showed us all what we could become. On the observation deck of the memorial building, a young Valkyrie stood watching the ceremony. She was a student, part of the first generation to grow up after the Great Change. She had never known a galaxy where her species ruled without question. She had never known a galaxy where the strong simply took what they wanted from the weak. An old human man approached her. He moved slowly, leaning on a cane, but his eyes were kind. You look thoughtful, he said. I was thinking about the device, the young Valkyrie admitted. The thing your people built. It was so terrible. Why did you create something that could destroy everything? The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, my grandmother worked on that project. She told me once that the device was never meant to destroy. It was meant to prove something. Prove what? That power is not the same as cruelty. That you can be strong and still be kind. That you can build the most terrible weapon in the universe, and then choose never to use it. He looked up at the stars. The galaxy laughed at us once. Now it listens. And together, we reach for something better. Below them, the ceremony ended. Representatives of 100 species began to mingle, talking and laughing, sharing stories about the woman who had changed everything. The cosmos continued to turn, stars burning in the endless night. But something had changed. Something that could never be changed back. Humanity had proven that the small could become mighty, and the mighty could choose to be good.